We are back. What I have now is my ciabatta dough. It's bulk fermented now for 3 hours. So we just folded it, put it back in, and gave it its last hour to rise up. You can see huge bubbles, a real stretchy dough, extremely wet dough. Now it's really pretty simple. We're just going to put it on the board. I'm going to cut it into 2 pieces, and I'm just going to shape sort of that dog bone shape loaf that you're used to seeing on a ciabatta. No more folds, no slashing. The dough's way too wet to do any kind of a slash. It's just sort of a puddle of dough. And then we're going to let it rise for another hour to an hour and a half to let that whole structure develop one more time before we put it in the oven, which is behind me and is very hot. And that's going to give the oven time to fall from the high firing temperature that it's at right now down to bread temperature. And I'm going to start this bread, I think, at about 550. That's my goal. So hopefully the oven will fall at the same rate that the ciabatta loaves proof. So here we go. I think we're going to be okay. It's going to pour out nicely. I read in the recipe you don't want to knock the holes out. You work so hard to develop them. Okay, so that's my real wet dough. Look at that great air bubble. Alright, and then I'm going to cut it in half. Cool. Alright, and then just going to shape it out a little bit. Great dough. And that's it. So we're going to give this an hour and a half to rise, and the next thing you see, we're going to try to bake this off, and hopefully we're going to make some nice bread today. Alright, I'll be back. Thanks. At this point, the fire has burned down. The oven is extremely hot, so I guess it's time to get the coals out of the oven since we're going to prepare it to bake bread. So, yeah, there's still quite a lot of hot coals in here, but I'm ready to bake. The oven is fully fired, so I'm going to get these coals out. So on this firing, I definitely could have used less wood to get the oven to this temperature. So lesson learned. So give me 1 second. I will use my shovel to get the coals out, and then I will prepare the hearth for my bread. So I'll be back in a second. I've taken all the ashes out of the oven and brush the surface. There's still a lot of little bits of fine powder on the cooking floor, and I'm going to get that up with a damp rag, which you do want to use when you're baking bread in a wood oven, but you don't want to do when you're making pizza. But what I wanted to show was the temperature of the oven right now relative to where I want it to be when I'm ready to start baking, which is that the oven's fired up into the 900s, and then of course you let it regulate and cool before you bake. So what we're finding right now is that the oven is 780 on the floor and still 850 or so in the dome. So we're in good shape. Now the oven temperature needs to fall. What I'm going to do next is clean the floor and put the door on and let the oven rest. So 1 second. Alright, I have a damp towel on the cooking floor, which I'm using to get up all that last little bit of ash before I bake my bread. So I'm going to put a little bit of steam in the oven, but mostly it's just going to kind of clean things off, cool the floor down a little bit. You don't want to burn the bottom of your bread before the top is browned. It's kind of a problem I've always wrestled with. So, and you can see we're basically in good shape. Okay, so the next step is to close the door and let the temperature fall. Okay, I've put the door on, mop the floor down, and now I just need to wait, and hopefully I've synchronized that my ciabatta loaves have done their final proofing so that they're going to be rising to the right spot right as the oven temperature falls to the point where I want to put them in, which is just a couple of minutes from now. Okay, I'll be back. Alright, here goes. So here's my ciabatta, a nice loaf. I've placed it on a floured peel to make it easy to put in the oven. I'm going to pick a spot right there. And then we're going to steam the oven. I'm looking for lots of advice on this for better ways of doing it. But for now, this will be my best method. Set my door in place. We'll check in a couple of minutes to see how the bread is doing. Okay, I've taken the door off for just a second, but just to show you a couple of interesting things. The oven is, it's still in the high 500s, and I was probably impatient and maybe loaded the bread a little too fast. But what I wanted to show you before I put the door back on is look at the rise, look at the puff in those loaves. Isn't that great? They're going to go fast because I put them in at a pretty high temperature, but I think we're making really nice progress. Okay, we're just about done. The loaf on the left is looking really good, nice brown and caramelized. I put that one in quite a bit before the one on the right. At this point in the bake, the dome is about 620 and the cooking floor is about 520. I put a lot of, I went back and forth with the damp towel over the cooking floor quite a bit because I actually wanted to get the cooking floor temperature down a little bit because the last time I baked bread, the bottoms were done more quickly than the tops. So I think we're looking really good. Boy, look at that one loaf on the left, just brown before our eyes. So we're looking real good. I'll bring them out and we'll take a look then, and then I gotta let them cool before I cut in. All right, I'll be back. Here's my first loaf. It's coming out, although I am gonna get my instant read thermometer and check the inside temperature to see if I've cooked it all the way through. And really what I should do is get this loaf out, get the door back on, and let the other one keep baking. All right. This is the second loaf, just perfect. Its internal temperature is 205. It could probably do with another 30 or 40 seconds, but basically it's done. It's got nice crisp crust on the outside, fabulous lift, and then a little bit of char on the bottom. I could probably have brought the temperature of the floor down just a little bit more relative to the dome, but in general, we're looking really good. I'm going to push that one back in. Ouch, I'm going to pull this one back out. I put him back in for another minute or two to get the temperature, internal temperature, all the way up to where it's finished. Yeah, that one's a little hot on the bottom too, but you know, we're done. So I'm going to pull both of these. I'm going to let them cool. I'm going to cut, but you can just see from the lift and the wet dough. In fact, you could even see steam escaping from the hole where I put my instant read thermometer in to get the internal bread temperature, that these are going to have great crumb and hole structure and lightness. So I think this is a success, and I'm feeling really good. I'm going to post this on the internet, and I'm looking forward to everything, particularly all you professional bread guys. Let me know what you think. I'm looking forward to sharing this and seeing how we can all improve. Thanks a lot. Well, I thought I would wrap up my my bread baking of the day. Sorry about my shadow. We have two ciabattas, really nice loaves. They're incredibly airy, incredibly crackly on the outside. I'm just really pretty happy with the way everything came out. The things that I would want to add to today's cooking experience for me, first was that I got the timing of the oven and the bread off by a little. By, you know, it wasn't terrible, but by some. The breads had proofed for an hour and a half. They were perfect. In fact, they were, you know, you could tell just really ready, about to start collapsing, and the oven was too hot. So I had probably used too much wood and fired the oven a little longer than I had to. Equally, I could have started the oven fire a little bit earlier. The second thing, it's kind of related, is that I then put the bread in the oven at a temperature probably that was too high. There's a couple things that I thought about since I did it. Well, obviously, one was just to let the temperature fall a little bit more. The second was that I used a damp rag a number of times to clean the hearth of the oven off, the cooking floor off, and to kind of bring the temperature down. So I think that's a kind of a trick that you could use to work with the temperature of the the oven to kind of make it work in your favor. But in general, like I say, I have some. It's a little bit, it's a little bit black on the bottom. So I was a little bit out of balance with the floor temperature and the dome temperature, and I'm going to keep addressing that by using more, you know, swabbing a bit more before I put the bread on next time. And then at a cooler temperature, it's going to cook a little bit slower, and I think the crust is going to have a little bit more time to develop before it, you know, completely puffs and balloons up to this really high temperature. But there it is. Wow, look at that. There's my ciabatta. That's pretty close. That's kind of close to what we're looking for. It's a little doughy on the inside. I pulled it out at about 205. I think I would go to 210 next time. But you know, as a what, a first, second time through with my new Primavera oven and baking bread, I guess I feel okay. But I'm looking forward to hearing what everybody has to say, and to getting people's advice. And the last thing I'll do is I'll do a little bit of a telephoto. I'll zoom in. There we go, into the crumb of my crackly ciabatta bread. All right, thanks a lot, everybody.